Good afternoon, all. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
The screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have started with the first unit of VLSI, that is the HDL design. HDL stands for hardware description language, right? So in this particular unit, we are studying the one of the HDL, that is the VHDL. VHDL stands for VHSIC hardware description language. That is a very high speed integrated circuits hardware description language. So where these languages are used to describe your digital design. Fine. So we have started with the different design constructs of this VHDL, in which we have seen the different data objects like a signal, variable, and constants. Then we have seen the different modeling styles or the basic building blocks of our VHDL code, that is the entity and architecture, how to write architecture using different modeling styles. Then what are the different types of the statements present in VHDL, like a concurrent statement and sequential statements that we have seen. Also, we have seen a packages that are available in VHDL and how to write a package body or the package declaration. Fine. So now today we are going to study the libraries, then sub-programs and the attributes. Fine. So once we complete this, we will see the HDL coding for our combinational circuits as well as the sequential circuits. So we will take a one or two examples, which are the combinational circuit and the sequential circuit, and then how to write a code for those circuits. Fine. In your exam, actually, the coding part is also asked in this first unit. For any of the now, if it is MCQ based, then there will not be a complete code or anything. But for theory exams, generally they ask to write a VHDL code for your designs for any given design. Okay. So the next part that we are going to start, that is the libraries. So in a previous lecture, we have seen the packages. So packages, it is actually the repeated data that we can store in a package, and that package we can import in our code. Fine. So these packages are stored into the libraries. So in the basically in the VHDL, we can see the library IEEE. Okay, this is the user built-in library available, and for from that library you can use a particular package. Okay, so for that you can write the use clause. So use IEEE, it is the name of the library, dot std underscore logic underscore 1164. This is the name of the package, and dot all means everything that is present in that particular package will be available in your code. Okay, so this is the way with which you can use the libraries in your code. So name of the library, this is the library is the keyword. So using this keyword, you can make visible that particular library in your code. And from that library, you can import any of the package or all of the data from that particular library. So it is again a collection of the compiled design units only. Physical location of the compiled VHDL data, file, entity, architecture, package header, body, and the configuration. That is actually a part of your library. So for your code, work is your current library. Whatever the code we write, that will get by default saved into the work library. Okay. So work, it is invisible. Okay. Or by default visible to your codes. But IEEE, it is not default by default visible. You need to include in your code. Okay. So whatever the statement, whatever the VHDL code you write, that will get stored automatically into the work library. Fine. So there are two reserved library names that are always available to designers. Okay. Which are the work, and second one is the STD. So this work, it is again a predefined library, and where your code will get automatically stored. And this STD library, it contains the two package. One is the standard package, and second one is the text IO package. So this standard package provides the declaration of the predefined types like real, integer, boolean. So its definitions are given in in that particular standard package. And TextIO, it is contains the subprograms that enables to perform the ASCII file manipulation. So subprograms, it comes under your functions and the procedures. So these are the two libraries that are by default available to your code work and the STD. Okay. So library STD, this declares the STD to be a library, and you can use the one of the package from that particular library in your code. Fine. So library clause declares the work to be a library, means whatever the word you are writing after that clause, it defines or predefines that particular name of the libraries. Okay. So user defined libraries, if we have to write suppose logic underscore lib, so assume this the logic OPS package is located in that particular library instead of a work library. So in that case, you need to make that library visible, and you can use the particular package from that library in your code. Okay. So you can use whatever the components, types, subprograms defined in that particular packages. So this is related with the libraries that are available in VHDL. Next part, it is related with actually the sub programs in VHDL. Okay, so these sub programs are of two types. One is a function and second one is a procedure. See, sometimes they will ask you explain the sub programs, or what is the meaning of sub programs in VHDL. The sub programs, it is the another name for your functions and the procedure. Okay, so these two things forms a sub programs in VHDL. So how to write? Now we have seen in our C++ codes that it is specifically we write the different kinds of the functions, we assemble it together, we call the different function from any of the functions. So function, it is the important part of our C or C++ codes. Fine. So in case of this VHDL, we write the entity, we write the architecture. In that particular, we mention the different concurrent and the sequential statements. Okay. In addition to this, we can also write the functions and the procedures in our code. So how to write those functions, how is the syntax, that we will see in this particular part. So if you have to write a function in VHDL, okay, function in VHDL, then initially there will be a keyword name, keyword function. Then after that, you can give the function name, okay, function name. And in bracket, you can pass the parameters, okay, parameters. We always know if you have to write a function in C, you write a return type, then name of the function, and then in brackets you mention the different parameters that can be passed to your specific function. Similarly here, this is your syntax for a function. So name keyword function name, parameter list if any. Okay, then return is again a keyword, and what kind of a data will be returned by that particular function, that you have to mention here. Okay, and then is again keyword. Then in this part, you can write a different declarations, like a declaration of a signal, declaration of a components, that you can include in this part after return and before begin. Okay, then after begin, there will be the function statements that forms a body of your function, right? So what you can say, this can be your prototype of a function, this will be your body of the functions. Okay, then return value, so whatever the value you have to return, that you can mention, and end function name. So this is your complete body of the function. You find in C or C++, there will be a curly brackets which indicates the start of the function, end of the functions, right? But here there will be the statements like begin and the end. So in between begin and the end, it actually forms the body of your functions, and there will be the prototype present initially before the begin. Okay, so this is the way with which you can write a function. So the one example we will see for how to write a function in VHDL. Okay, so you can see function, it is a keyword. Again, VHDL, it is not case sensitive. So you can use either uppercase letters, lowercase letters, or mixed case, anything. So capital letters and small letters both are both will be same in this case. VHDL, it is not case sensitive. You can use any of the cases for a keyword or any of the identifier. Fine. So function is a keyword. The name of the function is AND gate. Here we are passing the parameters. Okay, how which are the parameters in this case? X and Y are the parameters we are passing to the AND gate function. And in addition to that, we have to mention the data type. Okay, in your C++, you write int a, comma, int b. This is the way with which you can specify your parameters. Here, the way of this specification is different. You can write a name, port names, or this name of the variables, and then you can mention their data type. So here, in it is the input mode, and its data type will be the std underscore logic. Next is the return keyword. What kind of value will be returned by that function? Okay. Return std underscore logic. This is the return type of the function. Is a keyword. Okay. So this forms your prototype of a function, which is like your void add in bracket int a, comma, int b. This is the way with which you write in your C code. Fine. Then begin is a keyword where it starts the body of your function. Now this is simple example is shown where there is only one statement is given, that is the return x and y. So this function is simply performing the AND operation between this input parameters x and y, and its result is returned by this function. So x and y, ending of this x and y, the value will be returned, and that value will be of a std underscore logic type. Okay, so here x and y both are of a same data type std underscore logic, and return value will be of the same type. End, it is the keyword, and AND gate, it is the name of the function. So this is the way with which you can write down a simple function bodies. Fine. So similarly, this is the function body, but the important thing, how we can invoke a particular function, that is important, right? A function has always a different parts, like a function prototype, which gives you the declaration about that particular function, to know what is the return type, what is the name, how many parameters you can pass to the function, what is the type of the parameters to that function. This tells us, the prototype tells us about these things, right? Then you can write a function body. Okay, function body where you can write the signature of the function and the tasks performed by that particular function that you mention in that function body. And the next one is the function call statement. Function call statements means the statement which starts the execution of that function body. Okay, so here it is important to specify the function call statement. The only function that will start its execution automatically, it is a main in C, right? So except main, all the other functions you need to invoke by giving its function call statement. So in the same way, if you write a function body, then there is a need to write the function call statements also. So how to call a function? So the output of a function can be assigned to an output port or the same data type. The information can also be passed into the function by value. Now here you can see this AND one, it is the label given. Okay, X. So what is the X? X is your output port. So this, for this output port, you are assigning a value returned by the function, right? Value returned by the function. So you are assigning. So assignment symbol, it is the, you can see it is the less than or equal to, which is nothing but an assignment. Simply assigning a value given on the right hand side to the left hand side variable. So here X equals to, now this is the name of the function. Okay, and underscore gate, it is name of the function, and bracket you are passing a comma b. So what is this a comma b? This will be some std underscore logic data type. Okay, so a will be having some value either 0, b will be having some value 1, so we have to perform its anding, and whatever the result we return by the function, that will be assigned to x. So here a will be mapped to your x value and b will be mapped to your y value. Okay, so this is the way with which you can write a function call statement in this VHDL. Okay, this you can find a similar to your function call statement in C. Name of the function, in bracket you mention the values that you have to pass to the function. In the same way, there is a procedure also. Okay, so there is a quite difference in this, in between these functions and the procedure. Using a function you can return only single value, right? But using a procedures you can return a multiple values. Fine. Similarly, arguments in the procedure can also include both inputs as well as the output parameters. Okay, modes. So here procedure, first we will see the syntax. How is the syntax? Keyword procedure is there. You have to give the name for your procedure. Then parameters you have to pass to that procedure. Is again a keyword. Declarations will be there. Then in between begin and end, you write the statements that are allowed to that performs a particular task, that task of that particular procedure. Okay, so here it is similar to a function. However, the arguments in the procedure can include both inputs and outputs. So using procedure, you can accept input parameters as well as the output parameters. Also, it can return a multiple values too. Okay, how we can write here? So because as you are accepting x, y, and z, both are out. Okay, in as well as the out. So whatever the parameters you are passing, so here z is out. So if you are taking the multiple output of output variables here in the procedure parameter itself, then with the help of that you are nothing but returning a multiple values from that particular procedure. Okay, so procedure, keyword, name of the procedure. Now here everything we have written in this parameter itself. So this is a procedure body, you can see. Okay, is a keyword. In between begin, you are writing a simple statement of ORing of x and y. Okay, ORing of x and y, and its value or result we are initializing to the z. So what is z? Z is known to this procedure. Yes. Why? Because we have taken it as a input parameter for that, for this particular procedure. Okay, so in the same way, for this procedure we can also have the procedure call statement. Okay, how to invoke that particular procedure. So you can see the name of the procedure, and here you are passing the values. So we have a parameters x, y, and z. So where this how this will be mapped? So here you can see a, B, and Z. A, B, and the V1. So here A will be mapped to your X, B will be mapped to your Y, and Z will be mapped to your V1. So this is the way with which you can map your actual parameters with the parameters you are passing to the procedures. Okay, so there in that particular case you can include the in mode parameters as well as the out mode parameters. Okay, so these are the examples of the subprograms that you can write in case of the VHDL. See, the working will remain same, thus you can find the syntactical differences here. Otherwise, these of the language constructs you are already know how to write if, how to write switch like a case statements, then how to write the functions, what are the different parts of the functions we need to concentrate, like a prototype, body, as well as a function call statements. Okay, so this is nothing but the subprograms in VHDL. Fine. Then quickly we will see the attributes, and then we will see the examples of this combinational and sequential circuits, and how to write it, how to write the simple codes for this. Okay. So next is the attributes in VHDL. This is again one of the language construct of the VHDL. So what is this? This actually gives you the additional information about a signal. Okay. So these are the data obtained from block, signal types, and the subtypes. So this is additional information you are getting from any signal, from any type or any subtype. Okay, how to get that? So this kind of attributes we generally use to detect the clock edges, to perform the timing checks, also to return the range information about the types. So some of the examples are mentioned here. So most in many cases we come across the this part, that is to detect the clock edges. To detect the clock edges, why? Clock signal is required in sequential circuits, right? So in for those sequential circuits, the flip flop, okay, flip flop, it is the basic memory element. Okay, if you remember your digital electronics parts, the 1-bit memory cell, it is nothing but it is modified and we form the flip flops from it. So what is the flip flop? It stores a single bit of a data, and if you see its signals, so it has inputs like SR flip flop, JK, T or D, and in addition to that, we can have the reset input, we can have a preset, we can have a clock, which is a very important signal, which is used to synchronize your circuits. Okay, synchronize the different signals. Okay. So if clock is present, your output will respond to your inputs. Okay, if clock is absent, your output will not change in case of the flip flops. Fine. So it's important to detect this clock edges. So how we will detect whether clock edge is present or not? If that particular clock edge is present, then also then only your output will change. Otherwise, there will be no any change in the outputs. Fine. So we will see how these attributes are used to detect this clock edges. Okay. We will see with one of the example of the D flip flop. And if there whenever there is a clock signal, we always need to detect this clock edge, if it is a counter or if it is a shift register, anything. Fine. So there are various types of this attributes are there. Okay. So the 5 different classes of this attributes are the value, function, signal, type, and range. Okay, so these are the 5 different types. At least you can keep in mind 2 to 3 examples, because various examples or various types are again there inside this 5 different types of the attributes. Okay, so value, it returns a constant value. It function, it calls a function that returns a value. It creates a signal, returns a type name, and returns a range. So these are the different information that will be returned by a specific attribute. Okay, so value kind of attribute we will see in brief, because many types are there which are applicable to that particular data type, or as well as the subtypes. Okay, so which are those? First category, it is the value kind attributes. So these are specified by a character tick. Okay, attributes. So this is the symbol of your attribute. Tick, only one tick. Okay, so that tick, it is given in the double inverted quotes, two double quotes, and then attribute name. So whatever is the name of the attributes. So object preceding the tick is the object that the attribute is attached to. So now here T, you can find, just check a first T, then tick is given, and then left is given. Okay, so tick left, it is your attribute, and to which object it is attached, that is given on its left hand side. Okay, object preceding a tick. So T tick left. So tick left, it is an attribute. I will write here tick left. See, this is the value kind of attribute. If it is attached to any object which is preceding this, so T tick left. So this is giving you the information about that particular object T. Okay. So what information it is giving to you? It returns the left bound of that type. Left bound. So if it is an array, then it will return the leftmost value for that particular object. Okay, So tick right, right bound, tick high, upper bound, tick low, lower bound. So what exactly we are doing? What we are extracting a specific information of that particular object. Okay, and that is done with the help of this attribute. So this is one of the example. Again, tick length is there, which returns the length of array. So here, take one example. Architecture is some part of the architecture is written. Architecture, the name of the architecture, of is a keyword, b is your entity name. Okay, is. Now in this particular two statements, what we are doing, we are defining a type. Okay, we are defining a type. So which type? This you can see the enumeration data type. Okay, type color is, type color is blue, green, yellow, red. So what we are doing, we are defining a type, means data type, whose values are blue, green, yellow, red. Okay, blue, green, yellow, red. And what is the name of this data type? The name of the data type is color. Okay, name of the data type is color. So what we are doing here, this is the way with which you can define a user defined data type. Fine. And what is the second statement? Signal. Okay, this is the object. Then we are defining a 4 different signals: color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4. And then colon is there, and we here we specify the data type. So what is the data type of color 1? It is of a color. Data type of color 2, again it is of a color. So color is a user defined data type we have created. Okay, and second thing is we are creating the variables, like we are creating the signals of that particular data type. So color 1, what are the possible values of the color 1? Color 1 can take a value blue, green, yellow, red. Color 2 can also take any of the values between blue, green, yellow, red. Similar to your int a, right? So if you write int a, so what is int? Int is the name of your data type and a is your identifier. So in the same way here, color, it is your name of the data type. Okay, and what is the identifier here? Color 1. Okay, color 1, it is your identifier of that particular data type. So color 1 is equals to color tick left. So for this type, its left value, it is a blue. Right value, it is the red. Now in case of this high, it is the red, and low, it is the blue. Okay, high, upper, and the right, both will be similar. Then same, if it is an array, type bit 4 is array. 0 to 3 means 4 different components will be there of bit. Data type is a bit. And you are creating a variable of that type. Then length is equals to bit 4 tick length. Bit 4, it is the name of the array. And tick length, it is an attribute. Okay. So what is the length of this bit 4? Length of the bit 4 is 4. 0 to 3 means 4. So that is the size of that particular array. So these are the things that are giving us the additional information about our data objects. Okay. So in the same way, second category is the function kind attributes. So function type, function array, function signal. These are again a subtype of this function kind. Okay. So we can, in this function type, we have a tick position, tick value, tick successor, tick predecessor, tick left of, tick right of. So these are the examples of the attributes which belongs to a function type. Okay, function type. So you can see tick position bracket value. So kind of the function form you can find here. So it returns a position number of a value passed in. Means whatever the value passed here as an parameter, its position will be given by that particular attribute. Okay. And if you are mentioning the position number, then it will give you the value. Then it will, with the this succ, it will give the successor, means the next value. Predecessor means the previous value. Left of means whatever the value you are passing, who is the left of that particular value. Okay. Similarly, right of. So who is at the right of that particular value. The same thing is there. You can see again type color is red. Some values are mentioned. Signal color 1 is equals to color. Now position of red. Tick position of red. What is the position of red? It will return 0 because this is at a 0th position. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, now here value of position 2. What is the position 2? If position is 2, what is the value of the signal? It is a green. So it will return a green. Successor of blue. Who is the successor of blue? It will return a purple. Predecessor of blue. It will return a green. Previous of blue. Who is there? Green. Okay, right of blue. Right of blue is again a purple. Left of blue, it is again a green. So what with this, we are getting the information about this different values. Okay, positions, value, successor, predecessor, right of, left of. Next is the function signal. Now here, these are the tick event, tick active, tick last event, tick last value and tick last active. On the left hand side, you are seeing the object on which you are applying that particular attribute. Okay, so it will returns true if event occurred during the current delta time. S tick event. So this is very important as we are going to use this in our sequential programs to detect the clock age. Okay, to detect the clock age, we are going to use the tick event. So if it is a clock signal, you can attach to your clock signal. If I am denoting my clock signal with a CLK, then clock tick event. So what we are doing with this particular attribute, if clock tick event, if I attach it in a particular statement, if clock tick event and clock equals to 1 and clock equals to 1, so what it will do? Clock equal to 1. So this is my condition I have given in the if statement. Okay, I have given into the if statement. So here we are checking whether any event occurred or not. Okay, whether any event occurred or not. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
If clock tick event and clock equal to 1. So what we are checking? We are checking whether event occurred on the clock signal or not. So this is the way with which you are, means it is returning true or false. It returns true if event occurred in the during current delta. Event means what? Simply the value has changed from either 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. Okay, this is nothing but an event. So we know that your clock signal, it is nothing but a square wave, right? It is nothing but a square wave. So in this case, if this is my particular time instant right now, at this time, if we execute this particular statement, then event occurred means value changed from 0 to 1. Okay, and after the event, if clock equal to 1, if clock equal to 1, it means that this we have detected which age? We have detected a rising age of the signal. Rising age, or we can say that a positive age. And depending upon your triggering, we need to detect either positive age signal or the negative age of the particular signal. Simply, if we change this 1 to 0, means event occurred and value changed to 0. Okay, value changed to 0. Then what we can say, this is your falling age, or we can also call it as a negative age. Okay, So this is the way with which we are detecting a particular clock ages, so that we can find when the output of your sequential circuit will respond to the inputs of that signal. This is very important. So we are you many times you will find this kind of a statements in your sequential code, clock tick event. Okay, so this is one of the use we can see for these attributes. Similarly, tick active, it is related with the transactions. Tick last event, it returns a time elapsed since last event, means how much time uh, elapsed after the last event occurred. Okay, and what was the value before the last event. For that, tick last value, tick last active. So with this you can get the information about those occurrences of the events. Okay, next is the this fine. So again, there are many subtypes are there. We have seen a very few of them, to at least which will be used in our codes to get the information about the data. Okay. Now next we are going to see actually the how to model the hardwares using this VHDL or HDL modeling of this combinational as well as the sequential circuits. So we will see one of some of the examples. Now, in the previous cases, we have seen how to write the code for your multiplexer or full adder, right? Full adder, we have seen full adder or the half adder examples. So for that, we can use the combinational circuits, right? Now, in this case, before this sequential, I will show you the combinational. Okay. So if in case of the digital circuits, they are classified in two categories: combinational and the sequential. So we have seen the how to write a VHDL code for full adder or the half adder using data flow modeling, behavioral modeling, or the structural modeling. Fine. Then for those case statements or the with select, we can also use the multiplexers that we have seen the codes for the simple multiplexers using those sequential as well as the concurrent statements. Okay. Uh, in addition,
तुम्ही लीव्ह झालेत.
आता किती वेळ झालं रे?
5 मिनिटे मॅम.
मग एवढा लेट सांगता का? प्रेझेंटेशन सुरू असल्यावर त्याला कळत नाही इकडे काय सुरू आहे. काय सांगत होते मी? वन बिट कंपॅरेटर सुरू केलेलं. बोला कोणीतरी, कोणाचं लक्ष नव्हतं. येस तृप्ती.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
हे सुरू केलेलं मी तेव्हा का नव्हतं आणखी?
हो मॅम.
ओके फाईन. ठीक आहे, लगेच कॉल करत जावं तसं, कारण प्रेझेंटेशन मोड मध्ये कळत नाही काय होतं ते. फाईन. सो व्हॉट वी आर डुईंग ऍक्च्युअली, वी आर writing the truth table of a 1-bit comparator. Okay, so 1-bit, why we call it as a 1-bit? A and B are of two 1-bit numbers. Okay, now if A is 0 and B is 1, A is 0 and B is 1, so in this case A is less than B, right? A is less than B, so this output will be 1.
Ma'am,
and
ma'am, your screen is not visible.
प्रेजेंट ही नहीं किया मैंने. Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So 1-bit comparator we have drawn. Its inputs and outputs. 1-bit comparator means it compares two numbers. So A and B are two inputs, and we can have three outputs, and only one of the output will be high at a given time. Okay. Why? Because for any two input numbers, either those two numbers will be one will be less than other, or both are equal, or second will be greater than first. So some of these relations will be there. So based on that, we are writing our truth table. So 1 0, if A is 1 and B is 0, then A greater than B will be equal to 1, and remaining 2 will be 0. And for 1 1, A1 B1 means both are equal, so middle one will be 1 and rest of the 2 will be 0. Fine. So this is the truth table for our comparator, 1-bit comparator. So if you have a truth table, you can write the behavioral modeling style code and you can complete the architecture. If you have a true Boolean expression, then you can write simply data flow code for this 1-bit comparator, and you can write its VHDL code. And third one is, for that you need a logic diagram. Means for truth table, if you have a truth table, this is your truth table, then you can write a behavioral code. Behavioral code means using a if else statement, case statement, you can write the functionality. Next is the Boolean expressions. So you can also write a Boolean expressions from this particular table. So what can be the Boolean expressions? If you have to write for all of these outputs, then you can see only one of the input is high. Okay, so that input is high for which combination? A0 and B1. A0 and B1 means A less than B. You can also write like for 0 you need to write a complement, and for 1 you can write a variable as it is. So what is a Boolean expression for A less than B? It is A bar B. Fine. For A equal to B, what is the how many times 1 is there? 2 times 1 is there, right? So in this case, if you check the truth table of this gate, then it is your XNOR, right? XNOR. So you can write this as A XNOR B. So this is your actually XOR, and complement will be the XNOR. And for A greater than B, here Here you have a combinations like A and B bar, like A and B bar. So this equation you can directly write down in the architecture, and you can complete your data flow modeling style code. Okay, so this is the way with which, with this you can write, with this Boolean expression you can write the which modeling style, data flow modeling style. And if you draw the logic diagram using this Boolean expressions, then this will give you the inside of this block diagram. Okay, and from that you can understand what are the different blocks present in this 1-bit comparator, and based on that you can develop a separate modules, and then you will write a top level module just to combine all those blocks. Okay, so that is your structural modeling code. So in next lecture, we will see, I will show you the 2-3 examples in a Xilinx, how to write a code. Also during the practical sessions, I will show you how to write a code for the ALU, which is our first experiment, and how to synthesize it and how to implement it using a PLD. Okay. So we will stop here, we'll take attendance. Yes, roll number 1.
Present, ma'am.
2.
Present, ma'am.
3. 4.
Present, ma'am.
5.
Present, ma'am.
6. 7. 8.
Present, ma'am.
9.
Present, ma'am.
10.
Present, ma'am.
11. Those who have
Present,
completed
ma'am.
the attendance, they can join the next lecture. Okay. Still there is a 2-3 minutes time. Roll number 11.
Present, ma'am.
12. Okay, before the attendance, let me remind you, see, you have to pay the aptitude fees as early as possible, because we have to start the next sessions for our 3rd year students, and so till the time we have to pay at least 50% of fees to the ITNS. So it's a kind request to all, pay your 2400 fees, rupees 2400 to its account. I have sent you the details. And after transferring the amount, just upload the screenshot in the Google link provided. Okay. So complete it as early as possible in a 2-3 days. Just pay those fees. It's important to complete this activity as early as possible. Roll number 13.
Present, ma'am.
14.
Present, ma'am.
15.
Present, ma'am.
16. 17. 18.
Present, ma'am.
19.
Present, ma'am.
20. 21.
Present, ma'am.
22.
Present, ma'am.
23.
Present, ma'am.
24.
Present, ma'am.
25. 26. 27. 28.
Present, ma'am.
29.
Present, ma'am.
30.
Present, ma'am.
31.
Present, ma'am.
32.
Present, ma'am.
33. 34.
Present, ma'am.
35.
Present, ma'am.
36.
Present, ma'am.
37.
Present, ma'am.
38.
Present, ma'am.
39.
Present, ma'am.
40. 41.
Present, ma'am.
42.
Present, ma'am.
43. 44. 45.
Present, ma'am.
46.
Present, ma'am. Present, ma'am.
47.
Present, ma'am.
48. 49,
Present,
48,
ma'am.
48 आहे का?
Present, ma'am.
49,
Present, ma'am.
50,
Present, ma'am.
51,
Present, ma'am.
52, 53,
Present, ma'am.
54, 54, 55,
Present, ma'am.
56,
Present, ma'am.
57, 58,
Present, ma'am.
oh नहीं 59, 60,
Present, ma'am.
61, 62, 63, 64, 65,
Present, ma'am. Present, ma'am.
66,
Present, ma'am.
67,
Present, ma'am.
68,
Present, ma'am.
69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74. कुठे गेले रे एवढे आज? Okay, you can join the next lecture.
I'm
Hmm?
roll number 6.
Okay.